Everybody, welcome to episode 72 of Tactical Crouch. 71 was just a couple days ago. It was so fast. I'm KickedTripod, joined, of course, by Yiska and Volamel, but we've got another special guest on the show. Assistant coach for the Philadelphia Fusion. Huge off-season moves. Looking amazing this year. Hey, welcome to the show. ChrisTFer.
Me.
Yeah, back at it.
The record? Who's been on the most now? Because this is time 2 for me.
I think we've got a couple that have been to. Sideshow is probably number 1. I think we've had him 3.
Parsha's been up there.
I think we've only had him 1 or 2.
Okay.
Mineral actually might have been on like really early.
Twice.
Is
Yeah,
it just twice? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Part of Elite Squad then.
Yeah, you're
close. We're gonna start. We're gonna get a 5-timers jacket like
Yeah.
Saturday Night Live and just send it your way.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we do. We don't have a 5-timers jacket yet, but we actually do have a new merch
Wouldn't it be
store.
more on brand if we got like 5-timers pants? Because you can like crouch in it better.
But you
Yeah,
never
but
really
I don't
them on
wear
stream.
pants. Yeah,
But
I don't
that's
wear
okay.
pants on the show. So
Oh well, fair enough. Fair
Can't
enough.
wear
But apparently
no
it's even
show.
more on brand to not wear pants. I need to
No
I need
show
to get with
then.
it.
Yeah, that was yeah. we'll work on it.
Revealing.
We'll work on it for we do have bit.ly/TCP shop. We just set up a merch store, so we've got a Yiska t-shirt on. Maybe we'll just send all of our guests Yiska t-shirts just as like a thank you for being on. And it's just
Heck
it'll
yeah.
be
I'm sure
a
they'd
great
love
one.
it.
Anyways, we have a ton to talk about. So let's just go ahead and actually dive right into it. Big thank you to our patron producers, Battle Crab, Made, Pin, Lolshin, and Charlie L for supporting the show. If you like the show, go to patreon.com/tacticalcrouch. Lots of great stuff here. All right. Here's the big news, I guess, throughout the week. And it's not even news. It's just like a rumor.
Topical discussion.
As far as it's a rumor. But the rumor is Overwatch may be getting hero bans, ? Yiska?
I don't know.
Dude,
I don't
you're
know.
our juice guy.
I will say that this was a possibility, and okay, so let's say this. You guys know that I hinted at something at some time, said like, okay, this might be happening. That is only because I heard it from multiple people. Maybe that was after BlizzCon. Maybe they just talked to the same person, and after that, I never heard anything more, and it never was substantiated to me at all. It was only ever a rumor, but usually when that rumor occurs, you soon hear of it in the usual circles, and therefore, yeah, I definitely have no new knowledge on that. I was actually very surprised that I think Metro Overwatch came forth with that speculation. I don't know if that is actually the thing that Imon referred to, but we'll see.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot on Team 4 or whatever development team and Blizzard has control and is working on Overwatch. They have a lot that they consider with obviously 3-2-1 and the multiple different iterations of role lock that they've claimed that they've tested. Seems like there's a lot of open possibilities laid out on the table, so it's definitely possible. It sounds like.
So, do we know any details about the ban system at all, or is this like more just like, hey, hero bans, comma? Does it mean we don't know if it's 1 ban, 3 ban, based on role, based on we don't know.
That matters more than the fact that hero bans are coming.
Yeah,
the iteration of how hero bans look like, just as hypothetical, right?
Yep.
So, let's say you introduce hero bans in OWL, and you first have to declare the players. And your brother sits down at the PC and London Spitfire goes, Doomp is banned. He's like, well, I guess that's
I've been had, boys.
So, of course, very open. There's so much you could do with blocks, with like, when do you ban? Do bans like get taken back, or do they build up over a series?
The map or per series. Do your bans affect their bans? Like, do you ban a hero that they pick, but you can still pick it? Or
exactly stuff like this, right? Like so much
about the implementation.
The implementation is way more important than the fact of hero ban.
Right. Just like each team picks one, obviously isn't going to do. Yeah. I mean, I guess it might do something.
I mean, it definitely does something.
Yeah. I think if they even do it where each team bans one hero, that would still be the single biggest change to Overwatch we've had. More than like 222 and Northern.
No hero limit?
Yeah, I think so. At least the way we practice it would change like absolutely everything. The thing with like 222 luck is all it did was change the meta. It didn't inherently change the way we practice as a team. It just changed the heroes that people picked, and the way the game was the same, where they just one comp over and over and over. It just changed what comp it was. But the concept of like one hero gets removed per map, then all of a sudden we have to practice every single map with different, or how do we play this map without Orisa? How do we play it without Sigma? How do we play it without blah 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 blah? So it would like every team would need to have the ability to think on the fly and have like pretty strong in-game leadership to be able to survive in a hero ban world.
I also feel like it would make the coach's job a lot more. It would definitely turn a lot of that on the head. You know, how do you coach around that many variables is going to change versus how do we find the best version of Baroy calls the two comps that he's seeing right now in Overwatch League scrims as poke and rush. But I guess that's what they're calling it there. But essentially, like, it's just do we run poke? Do we run rush? Are we better at this or that? Which route do we take on the map? And all of a sudden, it's like, how do we account for somebody banning May?
Yeah,
like,
right.
What do you do? So, would you like to see, just like off the wall, hypothetical, Blizzard calls you up. They're like, hey, ChrisTFer,
hello,
we're
Jeff.
split 50-50. You're the tie-breaking vote here on hero bans. Do you want it? And do you have an idea on like what you'd like that iteration to be?
What I'll say is I very, very seriously hope they aren't going to drop a game-changing stuff like this 2 weeks before we play our first game. I really hope that.
It sounds more like a mid-season playoff patch, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, sure. I hope they don't do that to us. I mean, it depends. Like, I think that the way the balanced team and everything, the game is clearly in a state where it seems, regardless of the decisions you make on what you nerf and what you buff, it seems like the way Overwatch is going to be played is one comp rules all, and then if you're lucky you have like 2 comps depending on the game mode, right? And I think that if the goal is to have genuine diversity in the hero pool, then the ban system is going to achieve that. And I think from a spectator point of view, then I think it would become better. But I question like the competitiveness of it. You know, I think that one part of Overwatch is the fact that teams like even Goats Meta, you know, like both teams had the exact same 6 heroes to make work, and you could see the difference in how teams are able to make differences with it. And I think if you just kind of start rolling the dice and you don't even know what heroes are available and you just kind of relying on players to figure out win conditions and figure out mechanics on the fly, then maybe the overall level of what you can accomplish goes down. But I dare say any decision they make that helps the spectator aspect of the game is something that's going to keep me in a job for longer. So I'm all for it, I suppose.
Totally. To your point of you know, changing how practice goes, you know, it seems like it would revert kind of back to like a fundamental, like first principle level, where you now have to not teach but kind of instill into the players that like, hey, this hero does X, Y, and Z really well, so when we have that put in front of us, how do we deal with that? We do, you know, your coaching staff does this and somebody else's coaching staff, so it's still to that same, you know, GOATS idea of everybody's given the same tools, and it's just how people use them differently. So I think it would be kind of interesting to see
have to coach
people
a lot of fundamentals into players. Like, okay, we press tab, we see their comp now. The skill would be identifying what your comp win condition versus their win condition is, right? Because if the meta stays the same as what it was on the previous patch. I haven't played this live one, but then you kind of know what every team is going to roll out on the second you go a map, and you all have to worry about is are they going to push left, right? Are they going to do this, and then just executing your game plan? There's very little actually like understanding of how to win that goes into it. Because that's all been coached in VOD reviews, and you've played the same matchup over and over and over and over and over. So it's just like identifying their small adaptations. But in Roarlock, yeah, you'd need to press tab. They have all these heroes. I've never played against this comp before, which is something that's going to happen all the time.
Yeah.
How do we figure this out like as soon as humanly possible?
And to your point with like the spectator, viewing experience, this really impacts or has a chance to. I won't say that it will immediately because I have my skeptic's eye on this, especially immediately if and when this gets implemented. But when it does, you have kind of storylines already making themselves, like Philadelphia Fusion, then NYXL in the finals, and the bans come out and you ban Jonak and everybody goes crazy, or Jonak gets to play the Zen and everybody goes crazy, or Pine gets to play McCree. Obviously he's retired, but those are already exciting and can drive an audience. I know, too soon, pour one out, but
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that a small ban phase, and then I'm sure it would make your jobs and the desk at the stuff that you guys all of a sudden have a million more storylines to talk about, right? Totally. Like, this ban, let's see, did it impact them? Did they get enough value from this? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of positives to it.
Alternate Overwatch history. What happens if so-and-so doesn't ban this hero? That'd be great.
Yeah. It'll be. I think it'd be very fun. I'm skeptical, especially immediately early on, especially like if this does happen like mid-season. I think coaches in general are going to have a difficult time shifting gears into working with that. So it's going to be much of the same. Like, okay, I think we want to ban this. Yeah. Generally, because that fits, it plays into our team style, or what our team does very well. So you're going to see a lot of the same bans. And once you give the system a lot more time to breathe, I think that's when you start to see the more tailored. Okay, we ban this against this guy and that against this team.
If they're going to do it, I think they have to do it like today, even halfway through the season. There isn't a long enough break where teams can adapt. Right. If you need to do it, Jeff Kaplan needs to ring me up like during this podcast to let me know. It's going to be really hard for us to get the time to figure it all out.
Totally.
Do you think so? Then, because I agree. I don't think that this is. I think this is too big. I want to say this is too big of a change to put in the middle of the season. But we saw what Stage 4 happened with 222, which. And you've said that this is obviously bigger than that, but I'm also really interested in to see in how this actually looks for non-competitive Overwatch. So not Overwatch League contenders open division, right? Because like, do you have some person in bronze, a team in bronze banning heroes, or do you like make that a Masters Plus? Is that like a Masters Plus thing where you do hero bans, or is it just an arcade mode, or what does that look like? So.
I think it would be way worse this season to introduce a drastic change, because the number of games that each team played are so wildly different over the season. It's not like a hard stop each stage where you say, okay, team has X games. Like there's some, like Atlanta is only playing in February because like the 29th exists this year. Otherwise they wouldn't play in the first month of the season. Like Houston has a month break from March to April. These teams will have very, very different amounts of games. And depending on when you introduce that, I don't even think during the mid-season that each team just has the same amount of games. I'm not 100% sure. By the way, this will also be a mess for us in terms of like, we already had a hard time reading power levels based on season standings. Now it's these teams have different amount of games. So we can really not see immediately upon looking at the table who's actually like going to be put where. And it also will potentially actually create more excitement towards the end of the season, because some teams will have a game more, 2 games less, and they'll catch up. And it's like, okay, if you win the next 3 and the other team only has 1, maybe you can make plans, stuff like this. But yeah, generally it's such a hard season to implement a change. Also because like if you're the Outlaws, you'd love to have Roarlock come in at the start of March, right? Because you then have 4 weeks to look at every other person, every other team to just dribble about, figure something out. You're like, copy paste, nice. Thanks for 4 weeks of figuring that out for us, and we take those unnecessarily volatile losses that we would have taken instead. And to be fair, they could have also won games they wouldn't otherwise, but you get the idea, right? It's definitely highly asymmetrical.
Yep.
In how these advantages would work.
On top of that, you've got, another fundamental change. ChrisTFer speculating if this is, this will shake the groundwork of even practice, on top of traveling and players getting sick and visa issues. And like, can you guys give these coaches and these staffers a break? Like, this is, let's pray that this isn't the season that this happens. Let's wait till 2021. Extensive testing hopefully is in order here. Hopefully it's just an announcement, but
I imagine they're hyper aware of the importance of this season, right? Like, this is everything that's happened before. You can say, oh well, there wasn't the homestand system. There wasn't. This isn't how Overwatch League was envisioned to be. So they understand that this year is as important as it gets. So if they think that this is a change that's going to do it, then maybe they need to stick it in.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Man, it's going to be really interesting. Again, everything right now is super in the preliminary
of course.
It's, that one tweet that just shocks the world kind of thing. Hashtag San Francisco shock fan or whatever I need to put there. Sorry. But it's one of those things where one comment probably just gets blown out of proportion. But this is a rumor that we've heard about for a long time. Yiska kind of alluded to it a few months ago. Yiska's like, I think I have some juice. And we were expecting the juice and
for a while.
Yeah, and that's the big thing I want to say though. For people who are like, Yiska, where's the juice? And blah blah blah. Do you understand why he couldn't just go on the show and be like, oh yeah, Hero Band is coming? To
be fair, I shouldn't have teased it. And in hindsight, it was a stupid thing to do. But yeah.
You, Yiska, on behalf of everybody. So
crowd chasing.
Wow. God, the extra 9 views we got on the next video that watched just for the juice. We'll send you a free Yiscat sticker.
There you go.
There you go.
That'll be fine.
I'm all about making it right. But let's talk about ChrisTFer. We've got you on. We want to talk about the Fusion this year, or on this show, and let's go back before we go forward, and let's talk about the 2019 season. So after the first stage playoffs in 2019, Fusion did kind of fall in a little bit of a slump. I would say they definitely didn't finish as strong as they started.
I agree. You're not offending me.
Okay.
We're on the same page, yeah.
All right, fair enough. So what can you talk a little bit about why you think maybe the drop off happened and ultimately, how the Fusion kind of slid back into that?
I think we had obviously, there's not just one thing we can point to.
Sure.
I think that maybe, in my opinion, I came into this team season 2, right? So it was me and Elk, and everybody else was a season 1 veteran. So almost everyone before me had been grand finals, top 2. And I think that maybe internally, both within the org and within the team, we were kind of naive to the point where we thought, okay, we finished second last season. And the reason we finished second was because we were the second best team in the Overwatch League. And wasn't because that maybe we peaked at the right time or the meta favored us a little bit, or there was maybe there was a favorable draw. I'm not saying that Fusion weren't a top 2, top 4 team, but I'm saying that we kind of acted internally as a top 2 team, and those expectations we set on ourselves were as of a top 2 team. So if we beat anybody in scrims, there was very, very rarely a feeling of satisfaction, of happiness, because it's we're a top 2 team. That's just what we do. So even if we'd have really good scrim results versus Shock and versus Vancouver, we would just, that's fine. That's just what we do. That's how we roll. And then on the opposite, when all of a sudden we start to lose games against teams that we shouldn't be losing to, then it has a negative. And then I think that was maybe one thing internally, and then I also think there was the risk you run with a smaller roster is that you have very few ways to give people a kick up the backside. You can't inherently threaten, not threaten, but you can't say, oh well, if you don't perform better, you're going to get benched. And I think that we just kind of had this situation where we we identified, like, we knew that goats wasn't a good meta for us. Like, it's stupid to blame the meta, but that was just a fact, I think, really.
Of course.
And I think at the end of stage 1, we thought, okay, there's no way Blizzard are going to let goats go on after season 1. So we kind of like we said, okay, stage 1, we have a good stage, you know, and then we're going to be in a meta and we can build. And then the stage 2 and stage 3, we kind of do the same thing. And then what ended up happening was by the time stage 4, that was it. We cracked down. We had like a new level of motivation. Everybody was good to go. But I think the truth is that being good at goats taught teams certain fundamentals which carried on regardless of the meta and 2-2 to lock it into playoffs. And maybe there's a world in which we never really understood that style of play. And even though we were on all of a sudden the meta, which, you know, Mei Hanzo or Double Sniper or whatever it ended up being in stage 4 at times, even though on paper that's a really good meta for the Fusion, we still lacked like certain like team play and certain synergy issues. And then again, it's like, you imagine you spend 3 stages thinking, okay, once goats is gone, we're gonna be back, you know, we're gonna be good. And all of a sudden stage 4 comes, and then we dropped such stupid games, actually, stage 4, like games we had no logical reason to lose. And then again, it snowballs downhill again. So yeah, I would argue those were the 2 main reasons, but I think that I could talk for hours about them. It's all just like small ones, you know. It's not like there wasn't one like gaping hole. It was just lots of small issues, and that hopefully we're looking to fix now.
And I think a lot of people in there, you know, obviously we're in the throes of power ranking season. I, for one, maybe you can call me a Fusion apologist in that way, because I think I see a lot of people's arguments in rating the Fusion much lower because of the 2019 performance. But from what I saw, just from how you guys were playing, especially early on in stage 1 and then continuing stage 2, stage 3, it looked like a morale issue. It looked like not an emotional issue, because that I think that carries a connotation, but it was a morale thing, at least for me. And maybe you can speak to this if that's true. It sounds like it kind of was, but you know, goats was lasting much longer than what you guys expected it to, and it affected the team negatively because A, maybe they didn't want to play it, B, maybe didn't think they were very good, teams passed them. You know, it seemed like a multitude of things. And now we're going into a season without goats, a season that is going to highlight star players. This is a team that has a bajillion star players. I mean, we'll get into that much later, but this Fusion lineup, I think, is tainted from 2019 in a lot of people's eyes. And I think that kind of puts that to rest.
Yeah, no, I think you're pretty spot on about most of that. I think that, just if it's hard to you hold yourself to such high expectations, and then all of a sudden you fall below those expectations and you're not enjoying playing the game at the same level you were, then I think the mentality side of sports is everything, you know. Like, you look at the best teams in any sport, and if they enjoy playing the game, then everything gets easier. That's like one of the lessons I took from last year, and it's one of the things I want to, like, whatever I do in coaching, I always want to say, as long as my players enjoy playing with each other, enjoy playing the game, then my job gets so much easier. We'll start to win. So at least that's something I've personally learned from last season.
Totally.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
What was the atmosphere like during the play-ins and maybe after? Because from a viewer point of view, as we already said, like, it felt really deflated. Like you bombed out unceremoniously in a way. Like, of course, we also considered like that Shanghai is just good, which they, right? But
well, yeah, okay. This is always a really hard one for me to talk about, because I can tell you guys the truth, but no one has any reason to believe me. But I'm going to do it anyway. We changed a lot for play-ins. Like, we actually identified that we'd escaped the regular season. We were still in a position to compete in playoffs, right? And we said, hey, we watched while who's now our Roston, who's now our GM, he put like a little PowerPoint presentation of like the good times of like where we were in season 1 and how we finished based on just the work ethic that the players put into playoffs. And we changed the coaching structure a little bit, and we made all sorts of changes, and every single one of them was overwhelmingly positive. Like, I don't want to just leak scrim results or like try and inflate them, but like, really, based on how we were looking, we thought that we were gonna, like, based off how we were playing, that was by far the best we'd looked all season. It actually wasn't even close. We were going through scrims against every single team that we played against and having like mountains of success. And then we just went into a game, and the problem was that in this horrible best of 7 where we had to like replay Kings Row because there was all this drama. What had ended up happening was Shanghai was a team that had a strength, right? Like if they were on a Doomfist Farah map, then that was a map that was going to be difficult to win. And if they were on a map where they had to play this Mercy McCree comp, then we were in a situation where we felt super, super comfortable. What we call the brawl, which was like most people played Doomfist Reaper, but we had way more success with May Reaper. We call that brawl with the Sigma Orisa. We felt like any map where it was going to be brawl versus brawl, we were beating like almost every team with that. We were really, really, really confident. And what happened is the first 2 maps we came in, we were too hyper, like we were too nervous, and we dropped maps which were our maps, the ones we needed to win. And then after the first break, and we started to build. And then if you watch that second Kings Row, we played really good. Like that was actually the level that Fusion holds ourselves to, But by that point, we'd given away too many maps to the ones that were our maps, and all of a sudden we were left to play like Ilios and Dorado, and those are the maps where like Shanghai is going to feel comfortable. So yeah, I don't know. I think we really felt like Play-ins was the best we'd ever looked, and we really felt like Play-ins was the best internally we'd felt. I think that's when the team environment was actually at its highest during playoffs. And we really went into that Shanghai game like hyper confident. But that's sports, sometimes like if you play against an elite team, as Shanghai are, as a lot of teams are, you give up 2 maps and all of a sudden, you're going to struggle to win the series regardless of like how good your practice went the weeks before.
Okay, then that offers the hypothetical. You win against Shanghai, you get the ball rolling. Can Fusion do the same thing they did in season 1?
I don't know. I'd love to say yes, but I don't know. I mean, I think what happened was so what was really interesting about playoffs, I noticed, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the way that the top 8 finished in regular season was the exact same of how the top 8 finished in playoffs, right? Like near enough, like maybe
very close.
Like even like it was like New York 3rd, like Shock and Vancouver 1 and 2, then Hangzhou, or I don't know how to pronounce that, is 4th, and it like almost went. And even in play-ins, right, where you finished in regular season was where you ended up in playoffs. Like the regular season was almost a perfect. And I think the reason is that teams with good coaching, with good like fundamental team play and synergy, the longer you give that across the meta, the better those teams become, right? So although we felt like we hit the ground running really well in play-ins, like we felt like we were good, I don't know if I can honestly hand on heart say as you give us an extra week, and other teams who probably had better team play, probably had better like coaching organization, don't start to level up. If you took a screenshot and then on that day of Shanghai and we played every single team played, I think we'd have a really solid chance of finishing quite high up, even though I know we lost to Shanghai, which is why it sounds stupid for me to come here and make But I think that there was obviously problems within the team that make me think that the longer we had versus like a Shock, the more Shock we're going to develop day to day more than we were, And then I don't know, it's hard to say.
Interesting.
But I should say, and it's hyper important, that scrimmers are so irrelevant. It's crazy.
Totally.
Like it's how you play on stage. So I can sit here. I did this far too much last season. Was trying to tell people whenever I'd go out with the casters and I'd be like, no, you're sleeping on us. Like trust. Like we should have seen our scrims this week. So never again. Like I shouldn't even said it today. To be honest with you, I already regret it. But like, we felt, at least what we can take away is we felt like in play-ins it was the best Fusion had looked all season, and it was just we didn't show up on the day, and that sucks. But that's American sports, that's sports.
Also, that's any given day.
Also worth noting that the 2020 scrims leading into season 3 are the best you've ever looked. Number 1 all the way.
Of course.
I'm not even going to talk about it. The last time ChrisTFer ever talks about scrim results is an entire career.
Fair enough. Well, I'm going to hold you to that one, by the way. So there was a really interesting conversation this week on Twitter about Carpe. ZP and Sideshow were kind of going back and forth a little bit. Let me pull this up and see. I can't get the full thing in here, but essentially what ZP had said is, while we're talking about team rankings, the biggest wildcard team by far is Fusion. Fusion went all in on Carpe as a future of their team, something that was not supported by 2019 performance, but 2018. If Carpe doesn't return to form, Fusion likely to be play-ins at best. And I think the big one here that he said was actually the big tweet we want to highlight is this one. Carpe underperformed all year with the Fusion, and him getting outplayed was a strong factor in many losses. You had said that in your mind there were no real major gaping holes in your 2019 finishes, and I would say that ZP here seems to be pointing out to one that seems, at least from his perspective, is a pretty gaping hole. Do you are you worried about a return to form from Carpe? Do you agree with this take? I guess is another one. Is Carpe? I don't want you to throw your players under the bus because that's rude, but yeah.
Every player has his strengths and weaknesses, right? And in season 1, Carpe was able to play the heroes, which he excels at, and this guy played better than anyone else in the world, like just straight up. And all of a sudden you put him on a hero which has like Zarya is the opposite of Widow in a lot of ways. Like everything is communication, everything is like just like team playing. Like obviously there's mechanics to it. I'm not trying to downplay the hero, but compared to like the elements of what makes a good Zarya good and a good Widow good, they're different, right? So all of a sudden you have this player, the exact same way I talked about the team. Carpe is someone who highs himself to an extremely high standard. Like this guy is a born winner, right? Like a born winner, like true like championship mentality guy, And all of a sudden he says, okay, like in his head he's probably thinking, I played well last season, we were able to get to a top 2 performance and I was a big reason. And then all of a sudden he's someone who plays a hero he's not so good at, and obviously he doesn't feel like he can have the impact where he wants to. And I think that maybe that was a failure on my part to not like be able to work with him in that aspect to try and like tell him that to try and calm him down, because it's he holds himself to a level where he thinks like I should be the best player on this team, I should be the best player in this game, and that's who I am. And when it doesn't go like that, I think it's easy for it to get in your own head.
Yeah.
So I come back to it, the mentality side of this game is so big. But I don't think anyone looked at Carpe and thought that he had a bad season necessarily. I think ZP is probably holding Carpe to the standards of season 1 Carpe, and a hit scan player was able to do so much more in season 1 than season 2.
Yeah, I think Sideshow says Carpe, underperformed his quote-unquote hit scan MVP level expectation, forced to play an off-tank for 3/4 of the year, and helped his team finish mid-table in OWL. The comparison is to Stand One. He says, who had an average performance in Contenders NA, is now the most questionable main tank pickup in 2020. Role with the least talent.
Who now has a substitute, by the way. So that's another addition to that whole tweet chain that would be interesting to see them defend or attack. But regardless, it comes back to the morale of Fusion. Sounds like in 2019 suffered after stage 1.
Yeah,
so it's,
I don't want us to put it out as if like we were all depressed and hated our life.
No, but
the case. But yeah, we just within the team we held ourselves to a certain standard.
Exactly.
When you don't reach that standard, it's difficult. And to go back to the original question, there's not a single person that's worried about Carpe. Like we know how good this guy is, and we know we even felt in playoffs and play-ins once he was on Reaper, we felt like he was very, 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 very good. And you guys saw World Cup, right? Like, yeah, this guy's insane. Like, there's not a single part of me which is worried about Carpe at all.
Now, one thing that we did kind of mention later on in the show notes, but it feels like a pretty natural transition. In that same tweet chain, I think ZP's big point here is because you guys have signed him to a multi-year deal, you're somehow beholden to him, regardless of his mentality, regardless of his personal morale, to kind of always play him. Could you kind of put that to rest? Are you guys going to run Carpe 100% of the time, no matter what, even if, he's breaking mice and robbing banks, like somehow you guys are beholden to a 3-year deal with some weird amount of playtime? I somehow don't believe that you guys are going to run him if things don't necessarily work out as intended, right?
It's almost insulting, honestly.
Yeah,
I'd be insulted as a coach.
Yeah. Like our coaching, I assure you that our coaching staff has the backbone to make those decisions should be required. And I can say, if Carpe robs a bank, he won't be playing.
Beautiful. There we go. See, read it. Put down the pitchforks. If Carpe is
no bank robbing, that's what we told him.
That's.
Maybe just
that's when you've crossed the line.
Is that that was in the contract, right? Like business class for some people for their flights. Other people are like, just don't rob a bank. Just don't rob a bank.
That's one of the reasons we tried to get as much depth within the roster as possible, so that should something weird happen like that, both through illness obviously being the main one, but the same if performance or attitude becomes a question, then we have options, and we do internally feel like every single position where we have two people, we have enough talent where it doesn't matter. You know, we can lose almost anybody, and it's okay.
Beautiful.
I
Fair
think, like I was researching for an article about like the most promising rookies entering this season, and I just asked around the contender scene, like especially of the guys that were at Gauntlet or like that have a lot of like investment and would have possibly even considered people from Contenders Korea, and Yiska was not initially necessarily on the top 5 list, but then I talked to people and they were like, guys, like Yisu's kind of good, right? So
yeah, I would say out of so I with almost all of like the new Koreans we'd signed, I obviously don't have any experience working with them, and I can only watch what I saw.
Sure.
I would say out of every single player within our roster, the player that surprised me the most is Yiska. Like, this guy's like very, 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 very good. And he has the perfect attitude for what I would want in like a young up and coming. You know, he's so hungry to learn the language. He's so hungry to like become a team player. Like, he's so easy to talk to. I think we got a very, very, very good deal from signing Yiska, and I'm surprised more teams didn't go for him.
is there a competition between Carpe and him, or is it just like a hierarchical, like, okay, I'm sure Yiska is aware of Carpe's season 1, so that certainly like respect definitely earned,
has a lot of respect for Carpe. That's one of the things we spoke about when he signed for us, was that it was actually a plus for him to work under someone of Carpe's level. I mean, we also shouldn't forget that yes, to answer the first question, yes, there's going to be competition, absolutely. Like, Yiska scrimmed with us the same amount as Carpe in boot camp, and we're still going to be giving Yiska regular scrim blocks, like probably daily, even though he's not 18 for a month or so. And never rule out the possibility that meta requires 2 hit scan players. You know, it's not always just flex and flex and DPS. Like, there's absolutely a world in which like Tracer Widow comes back, and then all of a sudden, yeah, hell yeah, we have Yiska Carpe. That can make a lot of sense. You know, that's why DPS is a position where it's easy to get 4 or 5 players for and still find a way for all of them to be useful, because metas change and it's the most flexible role, right? So totally. I think excellent signing. I'm quite pleased with it.
So can we talk about, I think, one of your signings that probably, I think, stole the spotlight for...
Who could it be?
Yeah. You know, let's talk about ChipSa for the second. Obviously...
I'm quite familiar with him, yeah.
Are you? Yeah. I've heard rumors. Anyways, what's the plan with ChipSa? What's going on here? I think this was a signing that was really surprising to a lot of people. I think opened up a lot of... it created a platform for a lot of people involved in Overwatch League to state their opinions very strongly about it. But tell us about the plan for ChipSa and how he fits in this 2020 roster.
Yes, so I think almost everybody missed the point of the signing, and I said this, I think, about the Sideshow stream, and I tried to say this, but I can repeat it. Like, we were not in a position where we never felt like, we need a fifth DPS player, right? I think between Ivy, Eco, Yiska, Carpe, we have everything covered. You know, that might be the most elite DPS lineup in the league, or like very close to, right?
Yes.
So we were not in a position where we felt it's not. So that's the argument when people say, "Oh, you could have picked up a contenders player." That wasn't what we were looking. There wasn't just one spot available, and we chose ChipSa over options. It's we had to find someone that made sense for us on a multitude of levels. So the first, like, from a purely competitive aspect, if you are to sign a 5th DPS, you need him to be a specialist, right? You need him to be good at that one hero, right? And I think that Doomfist is maybe the perfect hero, where I would argue that like ChipSa understands that hero, like just the raw mechanics of the hero, better than any Overwatch League player. I'm not saying that he's a better Doomfist, because what makes you good on stage is how you communicate the decision making. But if you were asking how does he understand like all of the little intricacies with all the kit, I guarantee he knows more than probably everyone in the league. Sure. That would be my guess. So should there be a Doomfist meta, then I think it's absolutely possible that he is able to be brought up to speed to the point where he can play games. There is also a strong possibility that should there be a Doomfist meta, but we feel like Eco or Ivy are better at like the outside of just Doomfist stuff, that ChipSa is able to teach him a lot about the hero, because like we said, and we have a player who we do not need to give scrim time to if not required, because he's still it's not like he's getting rusty from not scrimming because he never scrims. He still provides us some sort of like of income, some advertisement because he has the ability to stream, and he makes sense. Like if we'd brought one of these EU contenders players, there is a strong possibility that for the vast majority of the season they rot on the bench without getting playtime because it's impossible to get 5 DPS players all to have a valuable scrim time. It's almost impossible. So we have a player who, if the meta fits, if the situation's right, he can come in, he can provide some competitive value, and when that situation's not in, he also provides some sort of like income value for the team, some like publicity for the team. Like I think that when I was told, when Tucker rang me originally, I was against it, but when he explained it like that, I think it makes sense. I don't think it's clearly not nepotism. It's not any of this. I just think that a streamer who has the ability to sometimes have value. I mean, if the meta's never Doomfist, then who knows? Like maybe ChipSa never plays, but that's something that he's aware of. That's something we're aware of. There's no mandatory playtime. There's nothing like this, you know. He's just someone who serves a role, and if the meta requires that role, then I think we have someone who's very, very well equipped to help us out in a multitude of ways.
And this is I don't want to. I just want to address the elephant in the room for people who haven't heard the parts on online and stuff. You and ChipSa are brothers.
We are, yeah.
Okay, cool. That's just like the nepotism comment. That was the comment it was about, and you were from the you stated publicly multiple times that A, it wasn't the case, and B, there were actually points where you were against it. So
originally I was, because the last thing I wanted to do was create the situation which happened on Twitter where my integrity gets called into question because I get my brother in, because this job is still the most important thing in my life, and that was important, and I told Tucker and everybody that from the get-go. But once he explained it, I'm not going to be someone that purposely holds my brother's career back just so
good
that
idea
I don't
is a good idea.
Don't get into trouble. Exactly right. Just so happens we have insane genetics or something where we're both
the Graham brothers.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough.
I suppose the counter examples, what could have instead be done that often or actually, no, I haven't seen that brought up, but theoretically, the other thing that teams then do is a two-way player, I suppose. Right. With like, and I'm not sure if that even works with affiliated teams. I will, however, also say a lot of teams don't like the two-way player anymore for their Overwatch League talent, simply because Contenders doesn't really teach the best. It depends on the team, right?
Yeah. Plus our academy teams in Korea, and it would just be, it's such a headache to have someone who we want to like bring in, bring back. It's really hard to not. Am I allowed to swear? Not to hurt the academy team.
You can swear. It's fine.
Okay. I'm trying to be good.
Appreciate it, but you're good. Yeah, you can swear anytime you want.
But has he seen a scrim block yet?
No, he's because he was signed last. He has had the visa problems, well, not problems, but like it takes time, right?
Of course.
So he's down doing his visa stuff as we speak. I think he's down in London right now. So hopefully he can be with us within a week or two. But he didn't come to Korea because it was just the timeline was too difficult from where he was when he signed. He was over in America for a bit. It was just a bit too complicated for it to work.
Yeah. I think one thing that people also miss about I think the identity of the Fusion organization is you guys have been one of the first and one of the most prolific users of streamers in your organization. You had Imong, Kabaji, and Hunmara, I think, for the longest time, and they were just there to be streamers. And so, honestly, I get a lot of. I don't think I get a lot of flack. A lot of people tell me I should talk about it more than I do, but I love the marketing side of these things. And from like a sheer marketing perspective, if you have a streamer that you love that's all of a sudden playing an Overwatch League,
Are you telling me that, if we tweet out, okay, ChipSa is starting the game against Florida Mayhem on Sunday, are you telling me you're not tuning in? Of course you are. Every single person. That game gets mad viewership. Not just his fans, but everybody would be so.
Yeah, everybody's like, whoa, ChipSa is playing? Really? All right, I got to see this.
And I think Seagull, I think, was one of the earliest examples of this, where you look at Season 1 Dallas Fuel, and probably one of the best pieces that they had in their marketing arsenal was Seagull. Not only did he perform really well, and I think that's important, right? You can't just go and find a GM one trick and throw him onto an Overwatch League team, let him, Rudy it for one game and hope that he, it's an American football thing. You guys might not have seen it, but yeah, anyways, he comes in for like one play and yeah.
Then the movie ends. It's the build up to the one play and then he gets to play one play and yeah.
So, but there's that aspect of you have to have somebody there who can at least perform and do that. But the fact that it makes sense at such different level, I wonder if the Dallas Fuel could have done so. But I mean, Siegel was starter right for them for most of that season, I guess. But still, that was such a great marketing move.
I guess
by
both
Envy.
XQC
was a great one.
We're both players before streamers, don't maybe Chips is a streamer before player, but I think the advantage is
regardless.
DeFran, another one.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly.
So
people like Atlanta and Dallas, I'm sure if you talk to them, will be able to tell you that the two organizations benefited massively from signings like that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And you have someone 100%. Who can play Doomfist. So
that's it. If he was just a Tracer one trick or something, then maybe there's
if he's like a Widowmaker one trick when you have Carpe, you're like, sit down, dude.
It's such an in-depth hero with so many different ways to jump about the map and like to min-max every combo. Then I think that's a hero that it's good to have a specialist for. Should you want to go down that road?
Yeah, makes sense.
Fair enough. All right.
The micro teaching aspect is actually huge for him. Arguably, like the most knowledge base. It's not really strictly about the mechanics of Doomfist. It's actually the mechanics how they work on each individual map.
Yep.
And that tremendously impacts what kind of engagements you can take and whatnot. So
all the little tech options, how you interact with the map, like you're saying, that's invaluable, I think. So
well, I'm looking forward to it. Now I low key want a Doomfist meta at some point just to see this happen and have my.
Whenever we play Dallas Fuel, that's the goal.
I want to see the marketing ramifications.
I see.
I want to see the marketing.
Last time I came on this podcast, I think shit talking Jane, so I'm not.
Yeah, I think
this time.
I think we're in the throes of that.
That's the guy. I'm not doing that again.
Yeah. All right.
That's a good time.
Let's talk about your support line a little bit. Funny Astro.
Yeah.
So people seem to, and honestly, I'm gonna let you guys ask it. Which one of you wrote this question? Was it Yiska or Joe? All right, Joe. I'm gonna give the reins to you, my man.
So in general, I think people look at Alarm as the prodigal child kind of finally getting his chance in the sun. You've got Fury, who obviously comes from London Spitfire. Ivy, I think, it kind of falls in the same way with Funny Astro here. But I think these are players that people don't necessarily have heard very, very good things, very glowing reviews, but haven't had like tangible like experience watching. And we can sit on the show and talk about how the Fusion have such a stacked roster, but from somebody who has recently worked with Funny Astro, where can you sell people on this main support? Because we have our small little soapbox, but you have tangible experience with him. So what is this guy about?
Yeah, so what I can say is I'll be careful not to say too much, but of all the players that we signed and all of the Funny Astro was by far the most in demand. Of all the people we signed, he was by far the player that we had to fight people off to get him, almost every team in the league wanted him in one way or another. Like I think as far as Western main supports coming from contenders, I think everybody recognized this guy was the top of the pile. He's actually somebody who I've worked with across 3 teams. Maybe people don't know this, but I coached British Hurricane for a short time before I moved into Fusion, and so I worked with him there. I've done him with Team UK and now with Fusion. So I think how sometimes in sports coaches have those players where they like try and bring them everywhere. Like I think that Astro is my guy. Like I think his mechanics go without saying. Like if you've ever seen his Lucio, he does stuff that most Overwatch League Lucios can't do.
Yep.
But I really love. I call him like a sponge in a lot of ways. Where like whatever he's one of those players who whatever I tell him whatever I want him to focus on, he remembers it and he makes sure that happens in scrims. And actually, as a coach, that's pretty invaluable to have a player who has that open mind. He's so incredibly coachable. For his age, he's so mature. Actually, like he's only I think he's only 19 years old. But if you ever talk to him, you wouldn't believe it. Like he's way ahead of where he should be for his age. And we just think that the potential should he be able to like, he needs to adjust his playstyle a little bit to like fit into like a high level Overwatch League team, because sometimes he's still trying to make plays where he doesn't need to. But once we just need to tune him back a little bit, I think we have as good a main support as any team in the Overwatch League.
Yeah, I think it's to your point of, you know, all these teams, you know, kind of going after him. I think there's a reason for that, and I think people, I think hopefully that'll be that kind of tangible proof that people can kind of latch onto and be excited about somebody who I don't think people are super stoked about. I think they see a lot of the big names, and obviously ChipSa kind of was the hallmark last trade or the last move that kind of dominated the news cycle. But I think people are severely underrating the Fusion's backline.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think our support line, all three of them are very, 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 very good.
Yep.
Yeah. I even think, like, if Masa wasn't already so entrenched in the structure of Rain, I could see just like from a talent point of view, you take Astro and let him start and just develop that.
Yeah, because I think Masa's also extremely good. Atlanta, we're blessed to have maybe the two best Western main supports.
Yeah.
So yeah, just one of those things, isn't it?
It's also, I think that is one that Huck wouldn't be ashamed to say that he kind of dropped the ball on this one, because if people remember back, of course he had a long suspension, but I think that probably would have paid themselves in buyouts eventually.
Without a doubt. Huck dropped the ball and maybe Astra dodged a bullet. I'm not sure.
Maybe both, yeah.
Yeah, but the way people describe Astra to me is like, feels very moth-esque in the sense that, okay, we like maybe has better mechanics even, I would say.
No, I would say
is more playful, maybe. As
more
in
personable,
like, maybe. What I mean is in his playstyle, right?
Okay.
Like he goes for the
One of the things that most people think is really good about Moth is that he's never the first to die, you know, and I think that's like such an important for an anchor position. It allows everybody else on your team to make plays. If you have that one guy who he's always doing his job and he's always in position, that's why Moth is the glue guy of Shock, right? Like he's the one that never makes mistakes. He's always in the right place at the right time, and that makes it so much easier if you're a DPS player to go out and make plays. So we just have to find a middle ground between Astro's ability to kill everything and then his ability to do his job. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
And that's what I think is so scary about this roster, to kind of progress through it. Like, it seems like almost anybody on this team could make a play. Like, you can shift your weight on who takes the lead in the ensemble to any position, even to main support. And a lot of teams can't really say that about their main supports. It's almost like I wouldn't say a detriment, but it's a position that isn't as, you know, fleshed out as maybe a flex support or a flex DPS, where you can, you know, ask them, hey, we need you to be able to engage and make plays here. Fusion can seemingly do it from any position in any meta. That's whatever you need
internally too. Yeah,
it's crazy.
This might be an ignorant question. Who's playing Baptiste?
I don't know if I can say. At the moment, we have a system where if the meta was what it was, where all three of our supports are going to be able to play, and there isn't necessarily going to be someone on the bench. But that ultimately is going to depend if the meta changes.
Sure.
Fair enough.
So let me pose it to you.
Just so
go ahead.
Usually what we see in Overwatch League, I think that will be sort of like the thing, like, you know, we had like Tracer plays Zarya. We had that in the past where that transition felt natural. And then now, from what I'm hearing, a lot of main support just go on Baptiste, and that seems like the natural part. I've heard definitely of exceptions where it's the other way around and the flex support plays Bap because the damage potential is so high.
Sure. We had it where, like you said, the main support played Bap, but we felt that at least when we were in Korean bootcamp and there were certain maps where you could play Zen Baptiste everywhere, and then there's no reason you can't also play two flex supports if you have players of the quality of Boombox and Alarm, right? So we tested everything. We have a lot of options. It just all depends where. It all depends if you're in a situation where you can just always play Zen Bap, or if you're going to have to flex onto Lucio, was probably going to be a significant factor in how we go forward.
That is interesting though, because usually you think of the main support as like the vocal centrum or center of a team. So then I guess that's also the justification why a lot of them just leave them on BAB. Like the justification I've seen is just like, well, you just gotta use cooldowns correctly.
Yeah.
The aim is nice, but not everyone is Rascal who just climbs on a flank and just like windows people down. But it's interesting that you then considered to take out the main support and you still feel confident in your communication.
Yeah. Well, I think that maybe I would argue that the concept of a main support has to do the vast majority of shot calling is maybe it's either a Western idea or it's outdated idea or both. We are absolutely trying to trying to build a communication system where everybody can communicate what they're trying to do in the fight, what their ult plan is for, and then have a system where you have as many people as possible all doing that, because you should always know how to use your ult best. That should always just be a fact. And if you're in a situation where other people are calling your ult for you, then it's not the most optimal. And I think that's something that I'm pretty sure the shot coaches are, and I guess now the Paris coaches as well, they've kind of split off a little bit. I think that's something that they're trying to enforce too. Maybe it's a Korean thing, but that's absolutely something that we're looking at as well. Like we can have in-game leaders, like it doesn't have to be main support, but we want every single player on the team to be able to call what's required to call. Otherwise, you can never have optimal communication.
Yeah, it seems like a kind of an antiquated idea to just have like a coach's arm in the team and then just let them be the sole communicators and call everything.
That's how it was when I was growing up. But I think that maybe the game it's moved on since then, you know?
True. But I will say there are definitely mute players still in Overwatch.
Oh, of course.
That just don't talk.
Yeah.
Totally.
So,
I'm sure there is, yeah.
Do you think that kind of idea of dating the whole like single caller system, did that kind of start with GOATs, do you think?
I'd start way before GOATs. It was when we were playing like triple tank, we had that exact same system. GOATs was one of the metas where you could have one person call most of it. Because a lot of it was about the order in which you use stuff. Like obviously ults like Shatter are really hard for you to call because your Ryan just has to see it.
Sure.
But if you're wanting to say, okay, let's use a grav, then force the trans and Diva bomb afterwards, just for example, then that's absolutely something that you can have one brain behind. But when you're in this meta where it's like Hanzo ult and May ult, like you guys need to be able, there's a very, very specific timing that those ults can come down. So they have to be able to call it. There's no way anyone else can call it. You just have to see it and be able to communicate and go and hope that everybody's ready to go, you know?
Totally. Makes sense.
Yeah. Fair enough. Where do you guys want to go from here? We've got probably about another half an hour. Yeah, so let's go.
I think the logical conclusion is
40 minutes out if we need a little bit extra time.
Okay. The logical conclusion or that follows after Phantom Astro is, I think, to talk about Alarm generally. The thing is with Alarm, I think he was always nuts in contenders, like really outstanding stellar talent. Definitely one of the players that would have been in the league if it wasn't for the age restriction, and it would have probably been one of the top performers there as well. Then, of course, like after they moved to Korea, the team struggled a little bit, understandably, like the circumstances and everything, and we also, I would argue, didn't see the alarmish type of clutch situations, which might be down to opposition, most definitely. Like there's always like two to the tango of overtime clutches and whatnot. So maybe Korean contenders teams are just smarter in not running into him. But do you feel there was a drop in his performance, or is he just still as nuts in his?
Okay, maybe I didn't watch contenders as much as I should have done, but was he not on Moira for a huge portion of that?
I mean, sure, that most definitely, but
that is very difficult for the Moira to be like the significant carry. I think it's one of those things.
Definitely, yeah.
What I'll say is like they talk about it in football and other sports where you just watch someone play and you just see that there's something like in their head which just it clicks better, and I see that with Alarm so much. Like he just has like an insane instinct for awareness. Just he always knows where the enemy is going to come and what's going to. No one calls it. It's just in there. He's calculating in his brain. He has such a natural affinity for where we should position that I noticed that like so fast that he just I don't know. He just understands Overwatch instinctively for whatever reason it is. And he's such a great guy too. Like again, he's another one who's very young, but I don't think from what I spoke to the uni team, there was zero attitude or anything problems with him. Like he's the nicest teammate from 16 years old. You know, he's clearly been like raised well from his parents or whatever. You know, he's. I think we're very lucky to have him.
Yeah, that's a thing that, like, sometimes when these young players like have that kind of success, and Alarm practically had the most amount of success he could have because of the age restrictions. Like we see, like it was fairly public with Who Are You in Apex, for instance.
Sure.
It just like becomes harder to contain egos in that sense. That was like, I asked around, that was never the problem with Alarm. He's actually also the perfect teammate.
He really is. Yeah, he's the whole package, honestly.
Yeah. So like your backline is nuts to me.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's so
and
good.
to have them placed outside of top 5, and granted these are power rankings, you know, everybody has their opinion, but it's shocking to me how many power rankings are coming out, and there, to be fair, there's only a few that do, but it's very strange to me to have this team placed outside of the top 5, if not top 3.
Yeah,
This team is stacked.
I think, okay, so the
Top 3?
the one thing,
Joseph. Come on.
We'll just have to wait and see. We'll give it 2 weeks and you'll find out where Fusion is.
All right.
oh damn.
Okay. Definitely
but-
higher than Yiska's Chengdu, that's for sure.
That's for damn sure.
Okay, so another player that from the outside might look very weird to people that especially haven't watched Contenders Korea is Ivy.
Yeah.
Of course, coming on from the Toronto Defiance, not an especially amazing performance there, was also thrown around in roles a lot. Like he went from Brig, he went from Zarya to Brig,
Right.
and like they try to put him in different positions. He's also like I've learned a special type of character in terms of not that he's problematic in any way.
No.
It's just like you would need different types of coaching for him.
He keeps himself to himself a lot more than a lot of them. But yeah, there's no attitude problems or any problems like that.
No. That's not what I'm implying. Yeah. Keep your Reddit threads to yourself. But, no, my thing is, I think from the outside, this looks weird. It doesn't look that weird if you're looking at the Contenders performance that he had before, where he was one of the most nuts, and I would say almost intuitively nuts players. It seemed like when you're talking about these intuitions where the players are, like that's something that's also very inherent to Ivy, where it's like, at least that's basically like Genji Blade syndrome, where it's like, why does he know that he needs to dash there? Well, he knows. Yeah, and that's Ivy too.
Yes. So at least if I remember correctly, when Toronto had their vast majority of their success last season was stage run, right? I think they went 6-1, 5-2, something like that. And I think most people, at least from what I remember, identified Ivy as their best player when he was on the Zarya, and he was causing teams a lot of problems. And then, like you said, he moved around so much that maybe things within the team got difficult for him. He's actually one of the players who KDG identified pretty quickly as he liked. And it's within the Korean scene, a lot of them have like a real lot of respect for Ivy. Like I think a lot of the Korean players, like you said, from Contenders, recognize this guy as like really, really, really good. For me, like I'm way more in tune with the Western players and how their reputations and everything. So this was kind of a decision that the Korean side of the family looked at, but almost everybody and almost everything we've seen since then, we're happy with the decision for sure.
Yeah, I think everybody got sold a false bill of goods with Ivy because of Toronto's, pretty poor performance. Even
speaking to people from Toronto, they said that like just on a pure like mechanical like game sense level, this guy is like insane.
Yep. And to be fair, like I think he probably should have been their standout performer, but even in stage 1, I think people do remember that Houston game in particular, the season opener. Ivy grabs being highly questionable. But overall, I think he did kind of prove himself on a role that again nobody really expected this to last as long as it did, and just I think you're going to see a lot of stonks, if you want to call them that, shift. And I think Ivy's one to buy into. I think there's room for Fusion to utilize some of his talents. So yeah, it'll be fun.
I'm looking forward to Ivy. I can't wait to see it. Surprised he's not from China, based on how much Joe gushes about him on this episode right now. Fair enough. I want to keep talking about players, and we're actually going to do that. I'm not going to derail the conversation.
There's one spot left that I think needs to be
definitely
talked about.
So I think the last one to probably talk about would be Sado. Sado is definitely I think has polarized opinions of him. I think he's had some polarizing performances. But at the end of the day, he sits at your lone main tank. You talked about depth, and you're one of two teams that we've had on the show that actually have had no depth on main tank. Toronto Defiant are putting it all in on Beast. You guys are putting it all in on Sado here. So sell us on Sado a little bit. Does he have the breadth of main tanks to have that lack of depth there? And just like, I think overall, why is this organization so confident in Sado, especially based after, I think if you watch some of like the Plat chat comments on it, I think they roasted, was it as Ryan that they roasted pretty hard?
That's where almost all of his problems were on the Rhine. So I think there's something that I firmly believe in. I think it's mirrored by the other coaches and people in management, is that there are certain positions in Overwatch where you kind of need consistency and you need like a pillar. And I think that when you start to sub out main support, like we talked about before, and then main tank, I think that throws the team off so much that we wanted to keep stability in certain positions. Like I think you can sub DPS players almost in and out and you see less of a change in the structure. But you've talked about Orisa, like every single thing that we do comes from Sado's pulls and his timing. So you need to have someone who is consistent in that. He gets so much hate, and I think that I could go on about how the concept of Reddit is it's such a toxic environment, because it seems like when maybe it's a human being thing, but once that they realize that you can type whatever you want about Sado and people are going to upvote it, people just try to one up each other, and people love this concept of just shit on him, or maybe I can say something really horrible. And some of the stuff they say, it actually really, like, I feel really bad. Like they say some pretty mean stuff to a guy, and if you've ever known Sado,
should read some of our 1-star iTunes reviews.
He's the single nicest person you'll ever meet. Like no one has a problem with him as a person. What I can say is this: at the end of last season, every single player, every single coach had one-on-ones with Tucker or with management or whoever it was, and they were able to talk candidly about coaches liked, coaches didn't like, players liked, what was the problem, blah, 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 blah. And every single player, every single coach that came back into that room said they wanted to keep playing with Sado. There was not a single person that went into that room and said, I want a new main tank. A lot of teams came and talked to us this season about potentially signing Sado. The public reputation is one way. People on Reddit don't have opinions. They just know they want to get upvotes. It's such a horrible, toxic system. And they realize that if the second, I've seen topics which are not even close to about Fusion. People just find it, wait, derail it, and then but Fusion has Sado, just because they know it's going to get upvotes. And like, I think that if these people ever, it's so apparent to me that these people can't watch and understand Overwatch at any level. And they just realize that they can just type this shit and it's going to get upvotes, and hey, look at me, I'm so cool, I shit on Sado. And that's not for me to try and sit here and tell you that Sado played well last season, or he was like the greatest main tank player. But you need to understand that if you play Reinhardt in a team which is dysfunctional, doesn't have team play, your Reinhardt suffers always. And sometimes he's out of position, of course, a lot of the time. But I think that every single player, if you got them in this seat right now, would tell you that they have no problems playing with Sado whatsoever. And I think my estimation is this time in 2 months, you're going to start to see it. Like, I don't know why you guys were shitting on Sado. The
bounce back.
That never happens.
You guys remember season 1? They got second place when he came in. He's a really, really good player, you know. And then that people are going to start to like circle jerk the other way and like upvote each other. Like, yeah, these idiots shitting on Sado. That was never me. I always team Sado for life. So I think give it 2 months, and all these people are gonna change their mind.
Yeah.
It was kind of apparent to me, especially we're about a month out from the season start, and this is a player who suffered probably one of the harshest punishments to date in the Overwatch League.
Yeah.
Came through, went
So
into
far.
GOATs, had a pretty difficult GOAT season, and is still on the roster. So there's obviously merit there that you guys are seeing. Obviously, as a community, as pundits, it is difficult to, okay, why not, sign somebody at a two-way? Why not sign somebody who could maybe fill in as a substitute if need be? But it seems pretty apparent that you guys are all in with him, and it makes sense, with the caveat that you guys are looking at main support and main tank as main, staple picks to kind of not necessarily lead the team, but to structure the team with those players in mind to keep things consistent. So that I think that hopefully will put things to rest. But
this is going to be the season of Sado. I think that he's going to. I hope that at some point the fact that he was shut on for so long comes back to bounce back in his favor, and then at least he becomes like memorable as the player. Even if they want to try and sell it as a improvement arc, so that they don't have to admit they were wrong at some point.
Sure.
It's going to happen. I think that I have so much faith in him. I don't have a single problem with it. And
interesting.
Yeah.
How is he working out in what looks to be a very like Orisa, Sigma, maybe even a little bit of a wrecking ball kind of meta?
I mean, he played Orisa in season 1 grand finals, right? Like,
true.
The guy is I don't know, like, if the complaints about Reinhardt I can understand, because you need to understand, before Sado joined Fusion, he'd never played competitive before, right? He was purely a ladder player that came in, right? So when he was on ladder, he was playing Orisa and Winston, and both his Orisa and Winston are elite. And I think the second he came in on Winston and came in on Orisa, I don't think Gesture was really good, but Sado was also very, very, very good.
Sure.
What I can say is that his mechanics are that of any main tank in the league, easily, I would argue. Like, on a pure mechanic, when I watch him play, compared to other main tanks that I've either coached or I've just like scrim against, his ability to hit every single pull at the perfect time. Like, when I played main tank, I don't understand how these guys do it, but sometimes they just fire the dragon and then Sado's already knows exactly, the dragon's behind it, but he knows where it's going to be, and the pull is the perfect time. And he's another one like Alarm, where I think he does have like a very natural like understanding for certain aspects of the team. And obviously he's still not the complete player. Like we said, he's missed a few years of competitive experience, which other players have, and that's going to hit him double hard when he just goes in and has to like play Reinhardt or whatever. But I think that the potential is there, and if you know Sado and you know how much he grew over the last year, you'd have no problems. Like, his English went up leaps and bounds. His personality, like how he is within the team, he's like a big brother to some of the players now. He's so outgoing, and like and for team environment, he's such a good player. Like, I really like the kid a lot, and I mean I've said it about every single player, so it's easy. But no, I think he's very important to this team.
I think another important thing that people need to realize when you talked about these postseason interviews with management, no player or very few players in the Overwatch League would just say, "Oh yeah, please keep him. He's very nice."
Yeah,
that's not what. Like, nobody does that. Everyone just wants the best main tech they can get. Yeah. Like, they don't want to play with shitters in their team. Nobody wants that.
When I say that, if you meet players like Eco and Carpe, these guys are fucking winners, right? Like, winners. They don't care about friendship. There's no Carpe and Sado want friends, so Carpe keeps him on. Carpe wants to win more than anything else on this earth. And if he didn't think Sado was the man to do him that, he would have very abruptly said, "Get him out." And he didn't. And that's because Sado's not the problem forehead, I guess.
I mean, also, like, a thing. Okay, so here are two things. I sympathize with the public a little bit, in the sense that it is very hard to judge main tanks without having a full picture of comps and everything.
Without a doubt, yeah.
Like, I'm currently doing research on an elite, or a player I considered elite. I talked to coaches in the Overwatch League.
Oh, yeah.
I feel very wrong now.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I also wonder if I'm asking the wrong people, and I even question the concept of like awards, because you know how much tape you gotta watch before you have a conclusive idea of someone's performance that can be separated from the team's performance. It's actually insane. And there's like coaches there's only, it feels like a designated amount of, or part of the coaching staff that even does that much tape as it would require to have a good idea about the entire league, right? So in that sense, I agree that like it's very hard to judge, especially as a layman. I will say then don't. Like just like refer to expert opinion and just like just use different language. Just say, okay, it's like I agree, by the way, with the public saying I still think that it is to a degree a gamble to not have a second main tank just because of things like illness or visa issues, right? So especially like that still was interesting to me that you guys opted to not do that. I don't think it's a very big problem in the current meta as long as Orisa is there. Like, of course, having a great Orisa makes a difference, but I think you can also, like, for the game that it doesn't work, you can probably put someone else on that position, like Poco or whatever, and have them fill in. I wonder what happens when the meta moves away from Orisa and you need like a, let's say this won't happen, but what if there's a monkey meta and Sado is sick?
Yeah. Then yeah, you're right. Then that's a problem.
Then they play alarm.
But I think there's very few teams where you couldn't say, well, what if
find something like this?
Meta, like there's always going to be like the potential for illness and.
Absolutely. The argument then though is like you still have an open roster slot, right? I'm not sure. I haven't looked it up how feasible it would be for you guys to pick someone up in the midseason based on
travel.
On travel.
I mean, maybe travel, but it's I can't say, but it's not as simple as just that. And plus, we really don't think we need it. Like there's
okay
part of it.
So just to stay on Sado for one more moment, and it's not really so much on Sado, but you also added Fury to the roster.
We did.
Who is sharing the off tank role with Poco?
He is.
We talked about having a pretty stacked support line, but assuming Sado, I think, performs at the level that I think you sold us on here and have kind of said is the level that he can play at. I mean, do you look at this as your a really powerful tank as well? Like, what can you tell us about this off tank role? And I do want it a little bit from the lens of like Sado, who is who we've talked about as being a little bit faltering, especially like on Rhino or whatever. But yeah, tell us more about that relationship.
We never at any point felt like we didn't sign Fury because we thought that Sado and Poco had bad synergy. That was the opposite of the case. I think they got on well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people maybe said that we didn't need Fury, and I think that conceptually that's right. Like there was not a single person who thought that Poco was a problem. I still maintain he's the best Western off tank and maybe like close to, but probably top 5 in the league. Like I think Poco is very, very, very good, and I think his Sigma is like outrageously good. Like very, very slept on personally. But I think that there's something in sports where teams that want to win, if there's an opportunity to buy one of the best players in the world, you have to take it, even if it's not the position that's needed the most. Like this anecdote maybe doesn't work for anyone except Yiska, but there was a time when Manchester United a few years ago had just finished second in the league, and we already had Wayne Rooney, and we already had like an elite striking squad, and we needed a midfield. Our midfield didn't exist. But in that summer, we went out and we bought Robin van Persie, and we just added a player to a strikers list, which we didn't need. But it's like, the opportunity for one of the best in the world becomes available. If you are a team that has the intentions of going all the way, then you have to make inquiries and you have to try. And that's kind of how I explain the Fury situation. Is this Fusion? We are very, very serious about winning everything this year, and I think that signings like Fury are a statement of that intent. Like. He's as good as anyone in the world, and we think that him and Poco between them cover every base. And I think regardless of who's ill, who's playing, we have an unbelievably talented off tank, and I think that we're very fortunate in that aspect.
Yeah, I think that goes without saying that Fury it's not just okay. So there are people that you could consider elite off tank on the basis that they are an elite diva.
Yeah,
but Fury's more. Like we've already seen, he's more. So I think that is such a, I think, and you don't need to say anything about this, but like the moves that both organizations made in terms of London Spitfire, bringing Bernard and the second name escapes me. Fuse, yes.
Yeah.
In for them, and then Furico and Nova. Like that's also, if that was indeed a trade, it's just something that makes the situation more opportune. If you like, if just as ChrisTFer said, is if the opportunity provides itself. Yeah. I don't think think of someone that shined so bright in a really mediocre team last season. There are not that many players like this, where it was very obviously, we could all agree, Fury is a top 3 tank in the Overwatch League, and he's playing on a 14th best team. That's an outlier situation.
Grieve was a role star.
Yeah. Thank you.
I don't know what more you want, man.
You just got to keep jabbing at him with it, huh? Just keep mentioning it. I mean, it is ridiculous. To be fair, you know, it is fun to bring up. But.
Dude, if Reddit can make fun of Sado,
that's true.
I can make fun of.
You can jab Yiska.
I can jab Yiska about Kariv, right? That's my right. That's fair. I'll do it to his
fair,
face.
I'm still waiting on those spreadsheets. I want to see why this kid got an award for playing, you know, a couple games of flex support in the season.
We're not going.
Joe, I'll tell you, the thing is, it's probably not even just the journalists, dude. I think we are so.
I mean, that's fair.
We are so like, we think, okay, this is obviously the case.
I'm sorry.
Hey, you started it.
I did.
Yeah. I mean, now you gotta eat that shit sandwich. It's that it's simply that also coaches just wildly disagree on things that we think is the most agreeable stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, I could give you a name, and I would definitely find at least like 5 people in the Overwatch League I all highly respect for their knowledge who would say Fury's shit. I could maybe not shit, but average. I could definitely find someone that say, "Oh yeah,
use another
beyond,
example." Let's try not to use an example of a player
beyond
of a
eating
coach
grabs,
who's on
like
the show.
his game awareness here is like this and this, and it's like, yeah, but do you know that he had to fight for his life in the locker room or something? Like, it's just like the circumstances or the type of things that certain coaches value is very, very, very different. And it also speaks to the fact that you can arrive at success in Overwatch still in very different ways. It's not like it's
not solved.
It's true.
Yeah, it's not solved in any way.
Could the season 1 Boston Uprising be a top 6 team under a different organization? Right? Like, that's a question. That's my question. I would say it. I would say that was the plan. I am wholeheartedly disagreed with, so I'll see myself out.
I think the argument for what you just said is that you can make a very, very good argument that the way that Shock ran and managed their team and the way Vancouver ran and managed their team were very dissimilar. Both of them played at such an elite level that there's no right way to do it or wrong way to do it. You just need to understand the mentality of the players you have and the coaches you have, and then what works for you is going to work for you. You know, there's no right way, there's no wrong way.
Yeah. True. That's a much better way to put it. I take my statement back. It might not even be in the final edit. I don't know. I might just like cut it.
It'll be, might remove it in post.
Yeah, it'll be like the film in Lost that they walk, and there's just little cuts randomly, like make sure not to, and let's talk about Sado. So yeah. Anyways, all right, fair enough. Any other? Yeah, go ahead.
I think the last thing to kind of touch on, there's been a theme within the show of having a championship mindset, being winners, and this roster definitely looks like a championship caliber team. So I think it'd be remiss not to ask you about the internal goals and maybe your own personal goals for the season. Is not taking home a title an abject failure in your eyes?
I think that's, you play a very dangerous game if you say anything but first place is a failure. I think that's very, very difficult because you're going to have 19 failures in a league. But I think you're right. I think that within our roster, I think within our coaching staff, I think we have every single tool that could be possibly required to win the Overwatch League. And I think that we're gonna aim for the top, but I think anything within the top 4, and we can sleep well at night, because at the end of the day, this is a rebuild season, right?
Sure.
Like 3 new coaches, like half of the players are new. Moving to a new city, like there's a lot. When you going to go against teams like Vancouver and Shock, who already got the blueprint, they already have it established. I think this is still what a lot of in football we would call like a rebuild season, you know.
That's fair.
But at the same time, we've invested enough money and enough resources into this team where we can't have a season like this yet. It's I won't be here this next year if I allow that to happen, you know. Like
Totally.
There's too many winners on this team and in the coaching staff for us not to really push for the very best.
Would you be upset if you didn't make playoffs directly?
Yeah, I would have had to have done something horribly wrong. There's too much talent on this team to fuck it up, to be honest with you. Like there's no role in which like everything we asked for in terms of for Tucker and Roston to go out and get, they went out and got. You know, we were so blessed with how our management handled this off season, and it's now our job as coaches to pay them back. You know.
So I do want to ask you really quick because we kind of skipped over it. So I'm going a little bit out of over here, but there was some pretty major coaching staff changes, and you're outside of, and I want to make sure that I get this one right, outside of Roston, Joe, and of course BLT. You are essentially the only coach returning this year. So you survived, yeah. So, I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about the brand new coaching staff and maybe the changes and differences that you've seen so far?
So I think that this is, again, I'm sorry to keep going back to football, but it's my only reference point. I think you see it so much in football that, and this is English football, not American football, that
Understood.
That sometimes even if the coaching wasn't necessarily the problem, the team is in such a slump and in such a way in morale that there needs to be a change up, and you need to bring in people with new ideas and a new regime to remotivate everybody. And I think that's absolutely something that happened. Like I think that I'm not going to tell you that the coaching was brilliant last year, like myself included. Like all three of us, we could have done more. We made a lot of mistakes. We realized certain things about the way we ran the day-to-day that we realized too late to fix, you know, and we absolutely need to shoulder a big portion of the blame for how we failed last season. But there was as much of it as we just need like fresh faces, a new regime, a new overhaul, like Philly version 2, so that the mindset that we had last season of this is the level that we are as a team goes away, you know, and you see it all the time in traditional sports. Just a new manager comes over and then just re-energize the team because it could be completely different. In terms of the coaches we have, like I think maybe last time I came on, I spoke so highly about Sado, and I think I've been very open about how much I respect and like KDG. So I think that really I was the winner of this offseason because I think that I could.
Yeah, it's kind of seems
got
like
the most.
I didn't even the strings here.
I didn't even put those. I didn't put those two pieces of information together until right now.
My favorite
former coach.
I got my brother in. I kept Sado, who I love, even though clearly he was the world's biggest problem. Like people think it's Tucker, but it's really ChrisTFer behind the scenes who's running Fusion. No, but I think that I personally believe we have as good a coaching staff as any in the league, and I think that obviously I've worked with KDG in the past, and I think that in terms of head coaches, I think he's as good. Even compared to people like Krusty and 9K and etc. I think he's a very, very elite coach, and I'm very excited to see where we go this year. As
a kind of a throwaway, you know, selfish question. Will Saito be traveling with you guys? Is he going to be on the road, or is he going to stay remote?
He's going to be remote. Okay. Maybe we see him at Paris. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest with you. But we've signed him under the impression he's going to be remote.
Gotcha.
And if we bump into him, we bump into him. But
interesting. Yeah, that's a legendary, you know, autograph or meeting to get a hold of. So yeah, I think that would be,
if I had known,
be a fun one. Yeah,
I had known. I think he was at Takeover 1. If I had known that I could be selling those like Bitcoin, like I would.
Really, yeah.
He is a bit of an enigma.
Awesome.
He's unbelievable once you actually start to work with him. Just I don't know, the work ethic that guy does is it was a real steal to be able to get him.
Yeah.
Can I talk about one last coach, because I think a lot of people know about him, but Moby Dick is actually, like, from what I'm hearing, and he's worked with a couple of teams now, everyone says he's nuts in terms of game knowledge. Like, he's like a supercomputer, just like calculating, oh yeah, you did this wrong in this fight. Like, it's just very like intuitive and like
we originally we looked at various coaches, and eventually KDG became available, and we signed him as soon as humanly possible. Like when that became available, I told them like, please get this guy. You know, like if he's bad, you can fire me or whatever. You know, like I know how guys. I know if we want to win, like this is the guy that we need. And then we kind of had to look for another assistant coach, and there was a few guys on the list that we spoke to, and Moby's name came up. So what I did was kind of similar to you. I spoke to some of the guys, because obviously he'd coached, I think, Smex on NRG when he was there, and he'd coached Toronto last season. And when I spoke to them, and I heard the exact same thing you heard, that this guy's like overwhelmingly smart. And then there was a really interesting thing that happened in the Korean bootcamp. We were having some sort of discussion, and people were saying we need to do it this way, and people were like, no, we need to do it this way, blah 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 blah. And then it was like we were getting into it, you know, like as teams tend to do.
Sure.
And then Moby just comes to me on the side and he says, why don't we do this? And it wasn't A or B, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's actually better than both. And it's clear that he thinks about the game in a unique way, to the point where he absolutely is able to problem solve without just A or B. He thinks about it in a different level. So I think our coaching staff is unbelievable. All three of them, I'm super lucky to be surrounded by people like them.
I'm pumped, man. I'm so glad we haven't done our top 10 power rankings before talking. This will make it so much easier. Yeah, for sure. All right, though. Last chance. This is literally last call for questions. Yiska and Joe.
I think we got them all.
You guys good? I think we got most of them. I think we definitely got the spirit of them all.
Yeah. 100%.
All right, sweet.
There's a reason they're top 5.
All right, fair enough. So then,
3.
ChrisTFer, we're gonna get you off here, but before we do, we like to give you a chance just to any messages you have to the Fusion fans out there, who I know your Discord mods and social media peeps have been so gracious as to share the show with them.
Right, yeah.
So they're here. So there a lot of people are in here from there. Anything you have to say to them, those Philly fans gearing up for season 3?
See, it's on them now. I think we've done what we can in the off season, and I assure you we're going to be working as hard as any team in the league. Before I joined Philly, the thing that everybody told me was that Philly fans are crazy, you know. So I'm interested to see. I want our home games to be something special. I want every team to come away from Philly knowing that they've had to play against the crowd, which is, I want to create an atmosphere, you know. I want it to be like the Anfield of the Overwatch League or whatever, you know. And when we win, I want to see people climbing lampposts or wherever it tends to be over here. I want to
climbing, but not breaking. Let's be just, you know. Just
I want
climbing.
full on riots. I want Philly to win it all at home, and I want cars on fire.
Televisions.
That works for me. Yeah,
that's what I want to see.
There you go, ChrisTFer.
Props to the fans too, because they're flooding chat right now. This is
look at you guys.
Like, you're actually talking to fans. You know, a lot of people come on, you know, it's more of a hypothetical question. No, there's like serious fanatics.
I think our home stands are going to be very good. I must admit, that's my favorite part of this season, it's a dream ever since I was a child to be able to work in a sports team which has an infamous ground, you know. And obviously we don't have the Philly Fusion Arena until next year. But if the fans are even half as passionate as what I've been led to believe, I think that teams are going to not want to come play Philly in Philly, which I think is the goal of the home and away system, right?
That'll be ideal.
That is right. Yeah, that's it. That's the ultimate goal there for sure. Well, thanks again so much for being on the show with us and taking time. I know you're in crunch time. The season is like 2.5 weeks away.
It is, yeah.
It's so close. So thank you so much for finding the time to sit down with us, talk to us about the Fusion. I think a lot of amazing answers. I think a lot of really challenging topics put to rest here. And so
hope so.
Can't thank you enough for that. Any shout outs where people can find you, all that kind of stuff before we sign off?
I'm actually on a social media detox. You know, I've decided it's not healthy for my brain to read Reddit or go. So if my Twitter's somewhere, you can follow it, but I actually don't care. Do your own thing. Live your life. It's okay.
All right.
I love it.
Awesome. Love it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. Big thank you to everybody in chat who joined and tuned in, asked your questions, gave us your thoughts, spammed your emotes. If you like the show, consider dropping the Twitch Prime sub, any subs right here. We really do appreciate all of that support. You can also go to patreon.com/tacticalcrouch, We actually crossed our $250 goal this week with Jory R in Indiana. Thank you so much. Welcome to the Patron Club. We're going to have a game night. It's going to have to probably be this weekend. So we'll let you know specifically when that's going to be. We'll tweet it out and all that kind of stuff. You can follow us at tactical_crouch. Leave a 5-star iTunes review. Somebody did, but I lost the little email with it. I'm so sorry. We'll thank you next week for your 5-star iTunes review. Follow me at KickedTripod, Joe at Volamel, Yiska at Yiska out. I'm sure they've got great stuff coming up this week, so it's definitely going to be there. Other than that, though, thank you so much for tuning in. Episode 72, we're going to be back. We might actually do another episode between now and next Tuesday to just get back on track with power rankings. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't even know anymore. We'll figure it out. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much. Bye.